How do we know that the arm of the Lord is not Israel? That is, a common answer from the opposing side regarding the arm of the Lord as the servant in Isaiah 53.
Shalom, and welcome to False Messiah, where we expose Christianity's distortion of the Hebrew Bible, also known as the Tanakh. In today's episode, we'll be continuing to debunk the claims made by Courtney Smith from Biblical Apologetics in her video titled, "What Does Blameless Mean in the Bible?", which is linked down in the description below.
Now, both Yosef and myself agree that Hashem is the one to do this for us, but the question then becomes, how does God fill in the gap when we sin?
This is an incredibly silly argument, as it presupposes that God cannot forgive sin without vicarious atonement, as though God, who is omnipotent, has a limitation. Courtney is attempting to impose a limitation on God's infinite power and mercy. It also contradicts what the Tanakh says, as in numerous places God forgives without the need for vicarious atonement. In Isaiah chapter 55, Isaiah says that God will forgive the wicked man if he returns from his wicked ways. In Jeremiah chapter 36, God says that he will forgive Israel if they return from their wicked ways. In Ezekiel chapter 18 and 33, God says that if the wicked person returns from his wicked ways, his sins will not be remembered. None of these passages mention anything about vicarious atonement. Even Jesus says that God forgives those who forgive others. He does not say, as Courtney says, that there is no forgiveness without vicarious atonement. And he himself forgives a paralyzed man of all his sins. Does Courtney believe that Jesus can forgive freely, but God cannot?
If God is pure and cannot be in the presence of sin, how does God restore us to him?
God cannot be in the presence of sin? Where is Courtney getting that from? Did she even read the Tanakh? In Exodus chapter 34, verse 7, Numbers chapter 14, verse 18, Micah chapter 7, verse 18, Psalm 32, verse 5, and Psalm 85, verse 3 refers to God as Nosei Avon, which literally means one who bears sin.
Now, God is a righteous judge, and Job 4 asks, shall mortal man be more just than God? Shall a man be more pure than his maker? I would submit to you, no.
So according to Courtney, taking the punishment away from the guilty and placing it on an innocent person, which is the most unjust thing that you can do, makes God a just judge?
Okay, counselor, we've heard all we needed to hear. I'm ready to rule. Mr. Smith, do you have anything to say before I sentence you?
Yeah, Judge, I do. Look, I feel kind of bad about what I did. Look, Miss Thompson, I'm real sorry. Okay? You think you could forgive me?
Forgive you? Hell no, I won't forgive you. I hope you rot in hell for raping me.
Okay, enough of that. Bailiffs, go get my son Jesse. Mr. Smith, as my free gift to you, my son Jesse has been punished on your behalf. If you accept this gift, you will not be held accountable for your crime.
What?
You mean you'll just let me go?
Yes.
Okay, I accept. Thanks, Judge. Thanks, Jesse.
Mr. Smith, I do hereby forgive you for raping Miss Thompson. You are free to go.
Woohoo!
I can't believe this!
Oh, you better believe it, Miss Thompson. You better believe it. Next case.
Is this Courtney's idea of a just judge?
The Lord's right hand has done mighty things. The Lord's right hand is lifted high. The Lord's right hand has done mighty things. I will not die but live, and will proclaim what the Lord has done.
Courtney is pointing out that verse 17 of the Psalm, I will not die but live, is resurrection talk. The Hebrew word for I shall live is ahya. Nowhere in the Tanakh is the word ahya used to refer to resurrection. It is always used in the context of I will continue to live. Courtney is changing the meaning of the word to fit with her interpretation. Not only does her interpretation not fit with the Hebrew, but it also does not fit with the context either. If Courtney would have just read the next verse, she would realize how silly her interpretation is. It says that God punished me severely, but has not handed me over to death. By definition, a person who has not been given to death cannot be resurrected. Even if she just looked at the beginning of the verse that she quoted, which says, I will not die, she would realize that it cannot be talking about a resurrection, because if you don't die, then you don't resurrect either. Her attempt to tie it together with Isaiah 53 verse 1 and 11 is also pathetic because those verses aren't talking about resurrection. A more general problem with her interpretation is that the psalm is written in first person, which means that the psalmist is talking about himself and is not talking about another individual who lived centuries later.
You see that the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. We also see that the cornerstone is related heavily with Hashem himself, per verse 21.
The stone the builders rejected is not referring to God. It is referring to David. It was David who was rejected by his own family, as Jesse, his own father, did not even consider showing him to Samuel when Samuel came looking for a new king. And even after being anointed king, he still faced rejection from Saul and from the rest of Israel. Only after Saul's death did David finally become king over Israel. The stone that the builders rejected became the cornerstone. Psalm 118 was composed by David, and it accurately describes his life. It speaks about him being surrounded by nations, and through his prayers to God was given victory over them, for which he then gave praise to God. This is a theme that is heavily connected to David throughout the book of Psalms. It has nothing to do with Jesus, who did not fight a single battle in his entire life. He certainly was not given victory over his enemies, who ended up killing him.
It's interesting to note that the word stone, or even,
It's Evan, not even.
in Hebrew seems to reflect a compound word of father and son.
Courtney is not content in twisting the words of Tanakh, but also twists the words of Rashi. Rashi very specifically says that Evan in Genesis 49:24 refers to Jacob and his sons.
Now, Isaiah 59:16 says, he saw that there was none. He was appalled that there was no one to intervene. So his own arm achieved salvation for him, and his own righteousness sustained him. And then in verse 18 of that same chapter, it mimics what we find in Deuteronomy 32:43 from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which I encourage you all to look up.
Both Isaiah 59:18 and Deuteronomy 32:43 is talking about the destruction of Israel's enemies. It is not talking about salvation through vicarious atonement. This point seems to fly right over Courtney's head.
More on the arm of the Lord achieving salvation for us is found in Isaiah 63:5.
Which also refers to salvation through the destruction of Israel's enemies.
Now, how do we know that the arm of the Lord is not Israel? That is, a common answer from the opposing side regarding the arm of the Lord as the servant in Isaiah 53.
Judaism claims that the arm of the Lord refers to Israel? No, it doesn't. The arm of the Lord refers to God's might and power as he destroys Israel's enemies, thereby bringing about Israel's redemption. This is how it is used consistently throughout the Tanakh. Courtney not only reveals that she has no clue what arm of the Lord actually means or what Judaism says about it, but she hasn't even done the most basic research on what Judaism says about it. As you can see on Jews for Judaism's site, the arm of the Lord refers to Israel's physical redemption from the oppression of other nations, and it gives several verses to support its position.
Look no further than Isaiah 51, which tells us that the arm of the Lord cut Rahab into pieces and parted waters. Now, that certainly wasn't Israel that did that.
No one except Courtney says that the arm of the Lord refers to Israel. This is what's called a straw man. Ironically, Courtney debunks her own argument because Jesus didn't either cut Rahab to pieces or split the water. So Jesus can't either be the arm of the Lord.
So, if you reject the arm of the Lord and what he, i.e. Yeshua, did for you.
So far, Courtney has not brought any evidence that the arm of the Lord refers to Jesus. All she did was debunk a straw man. That does not prove that her interpretation is correct. The arm of the Lord refers to God's might bringing redemption to Israel by destroying their enemies. That is not something that can be accepted or rejected.